stars, roadies, or groupies were harmed in the making of this broadcast. Giving it to you straight and no chaser. This is On the Rocks with Jamie Wilson. Hey, what's up, man? Welcome to On the Rocks. I'm Jamie Wilson, and boy, it's a rainy Wednesday night. I hope you guys are staying safe out there and dry. And we've got a great show for you tonight because it's vinyl night. So we've got two guitar gods on the show tonight to talk about their extensive vinyl collection and their music and the stories behind it. But before that, we've got a few announcements from Offshore Music. Suspiria Pink's brand new album Vices is available on all streaming platforms now, so you better make sure you guys listen to this amazing album from these amazing young men. Also, we're releasing Sabado 1995, the Eraserheads 45 RPM vinyl. It's coming soon, and it features the Esquire recordings, and it also includes bonus remix versions by D-Maps and Lust Bass. Also, we'd like to thank our friends from the Misty Mountain Cafe and Buenos Dias Panaderia. Buenos Dias Panaderia has this new concoction, and I think it's my new favorite. It's the espresso buns. It's actually edged out the Milo buns as my favorite baked goods from them, and it's amazing. It brings me so much happiness. And of course, if you pair it with the premium coffees from the Misty Mountain Cafe, it's a perfect combination. We'd also like to thank our friends from Liquor.ph because the best rums are at Liquor.ph this July. The month of rum is still going on at Liquor.ph, and I am drinking this Clement tonight. Yeah, this dark rum is keeping me company tonight. Now, the month of rum is still going on at Liquor.ph with up to 45% off on bottles and bundles from Matusalem, Clement, Plantation, and more. So make sure to visit their website to get the best on these rums until the end of the month. Thank you so much, Liquor.ph. So, hey, man, we've got an exciting show because, from backstage pa lang and the chikahan and the kwentuhan, it's going to be a fun night because we've got two guitar gods. Our first guest coming up, I want to introduce him. He is the founder of the UP Jazz Ensemble, leader of the jazz group Johnny Alegre Affinity and the world music group Human Folk. He is an exceptional guitar player and performer. It's such a pleasure to watch this guy on stage each time. He's also an avid comic book collector and a vinyl collector. Please welcome to the show, Johnny Alegre.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, nice Johnny, how you doing, man?
It's good. Rainy weather, but it's good.
I know, shut up. I love the rain. It's such a mixed blessing. It makes me want to go out and wear a jacket just to be outside, but then at the same time, it's also nice to stay home. So it's so, it's just one of those nights. All right, I'm going to introduce our second guest. He is the endorser of Vox Amps Philippines. He's the lead axeman in both the jazz group Kiss the Bride and also for the longest running blues band in the Philippines, the Blue Rats. And I've had the honor and the privilege of performing many gigs with this man. He's an insanely gifted and self-taught guitar player whose cool demeanor is a sharp contrast to his incendiary solos. He is also an avid collector of vinyl and fine scotches. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Joey Puyat.
Hey, I like that part of an avid collector of fine scotches and vinyl. I better not say it too loud because my wife might hear and confiscate the real goods. So far, everything that you see here behind me, that's legal as far as she's concerned. Okay, and that other stuff, the stuff over there.
Yeah, right? Look at those guitars and those shelves of vinyl. Man, yeah. Joey, I have fallen victim to your apple juice many a time during the gig. So, that's got to be somehow legal because you're sharing it with the band anyway. You're not drinking it all by yourself.
Well, for those that are watching, I used to. Well, I normally bring a glass of libations on stage, and just tell the guys that it's apple juice. Okay, so during our gigs with Jamie, he would always wonder why during the third set, things would get really wild. As in, like sometimes I'd forget where we were. Okay, and he'd just turn around and give me the eye. Si direct. And so one time he goes, let me have some of that apple juice that you have. Baka yan. And he my gosh, he turned red. No, it was pure single malt Scotch. So ever since then, that's been our drink of choice.
Well, I try to not drink too much of that fine Scotch during the first and second set because I tend to forget also where we are by the third set.
Yeah, that's okay as long as we still know each other by the time the night's over. That's fine. Which I'm not
Okay,
too
guys.
sure it happens all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. So, guys, I just want to say hello. Want to thank you for coming on to the show, and I just want to figure out, so how are you guys doing during the pandemic? Johnny, how's the pandemic been treating you?
Well, it hasn't really stopped me. I'm still recording, except that I don't play live anymore. It's been like a long time already that I haven't played live, and I miss it.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. I've had the good fortune to have a few acoustic gigs with our friend Nino Mendoza in La Colina, and really it's after a year of not playing live. I mean, we used to have gigs like, remember, Joey, every twice a month, 3 times a month, 3 sets per gig, and
Good old
it
days.
was, yeah, I mean, the good old days. But then, when you come back during the pandemic, it's kind of weird because, in the back of my head, I can't really cut loose on stage because I'm worried about, people getting too close, people not wearing a mask, people, you know what I mean? It's just in the back of my head constantly until, of course, I have more apple juice and then I forget all about it. That's what happens. How about you, Joey? How has the pandemic been treating you?
It was kind of challenging at the start because the first couple of months was just a total freak. Everything was thrown out of kilter. Our office was locked down, which is I do have a day job. I go to the office, and I didn't see my people for all of 2.5 months. But ever since then, we've been going to the office. I go to the office regularly, about 4 or 5 times a week. But after the third month into the pandemic, usually you're twiddling your thumbs and not used to staying home all the time, right?
Yeah.
And with me, I'm always used to, the daytime I'm in the office, and at nighttime, as you said, we usually have 2, 3. Sometimes there were times, man, that the Blue Rats had about 5, 6 gigs every month. And so biglang walang gig. So I'm here, I'm at home, and this is I kind of settled on a routine wherein I have dinner. Okay, I'm just cutting short. Okay, spend the whole day and in front of my computer and doing Zoom meetings with my staff. But after having dinner with my wife, I retired to this room here, and it's given me the opportunity to play so much music, man. I haven't listened to this much music, and I listen to a lot of music. I haven't listened to this much music on vinyl. The past year, I probably listened to maybe 15 years worth of listening. Okay,
Wow.
because I'd spend between 5, 6 hours every night. Okay, and I must confess, you're seeing part of my collection is modest compared to some guys who are really over the top. But probably in this room, I probably have about 3,000 LPs, and I'm ashamed to admit, but I know that there are a lot of obsessive dudes out there who collect as well,
Yeah.
like Butch Saulog. Okay? I always pray that before I go to Disc Union, which is a recent discovery of mine through him, the past 3 years, that I always pray that I go to Disc Union at least 24 hours before he goes. Because once he goes, ubus lahat, man. But anyway, I was saying, that stash up there, that's about 500 records. And through my successive trips, I had amassed all these LPs, these vinyls that I hadn't listened to, but because I was going abroad so much before the pandemic,
Yeah.
I was able to buy a lot of them in Tokyo. It's so reasonably priced and the quality so good. I'm proud to say, out of those 500, I'm down to maybe about 50. I've listened to about 450 of them.
Wow. Nice.
And then I've listened to a lot of what's under also, again, as well. So anyway, that's a lot of listening, for me anyway.
Johnny, you wanna pan your camera and show us the boxes of your LP because Joey's making yabang already his shelves, eh. You know?
Okay, all right. I don't know. Those boxes. I don't know if you can see them well enough. I have
Yeah.
around maybe 3,500 records in all of these boxes. All of those. See those. See those. Each
Okay.
box can probably have like around 50 discs.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I have 2, 4, 6, 6, 12, 18, 24, 32, 40, 46, 50,
Oh
around
no, we're
65 boxes. 65 boxes.
65 boxes. That's insane.
Boxes around
No,
50 discs.
now Johnny, you
And
look like you're very
and walang
organized.
tapon.
Johnny, you look like you're
Walang
very
tapon. Walang
organized.
basura.
Are there any? Is there a catalog system that you follow with your boxes?
Not listed. I know what I have, and they're sorted. They're sorted in the respective boxes. Like
Mhm.
if I have a Beatles box,
Ah,
I have a George Harrison box. I have a John Lennon box. I have a McCartney box. I have several Beatles boxes, and these are catalog. These are like Capitol pressings. These are UK pressings. These are Japanese pressings, so on and so forth. And I try to be as complete as possible. And not one copy is less than excellent condition.
wow, wow,
If
that's
as much as
amazing.
I see a hairline, goodbye.
Well, if there's
So
any
I'm very
hairline, if
very
there's any
strict.
hairline, I'm here. Kasi I'm not,
I have
I'm
a few.
not that
I can
meticulous.
spare
I'm
you.
not that
I
meticulous.
can spare you. You care for stuff like this?
Yeah, man, that's Zep. That's Coda.
Do you
Hell
see
yeah. I
this?
don't, I don't have that yet. I don't have that yet.
So, let me see. I this is like I have multiple copies. I have multiple pressings. Like this is I don't know if you see this. How do I?
Put it in
I don't
front of
know
your
if you see.
face. There we go. The
There,
Who. Ooh, live it reads. Live it leads.
yeah,
Sorry, live it
yeah.
leads.
This is my throwaway. I have three different pressings. I have an original UK and never mind. I have multiple copies. So yeah.
And we
So
have a few comments.
my problem
We
is
have a
space.
few comments. We have a few comments from the viewers now. Robert Tuazon says hello, Joey and Johnny.
Hey, Robert.
Hi Rob.
And then we have Robert Key saying, Sir Johnny, I'm just here for your copies you want to dispose of.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. Let's talk. Let's talk tomorrow.
What about you,
Yeah.
Joey? Do you have any organizational, plan for your shelves?
Yeah,
On the
well,
way you store it?
um, I have to credit Johnny for that because my story is this, which I started buying vinyls when I was in late high school and got heavy into it after college because I had a good fortune of working in Hong Kong.
Wow.
I worked in an office in Causeway Bay actually, and fortunately outside of the office because what's a single guy to do in Hong Kong? I'm in my 20s, and most of the staff there are local Chinese. So during those days, there was not much to go to, except if you went to a hotel or a bar where there were a lot of Caucasians. So, but the good thing about our office was this: it was in a dump on Hennessy Road, okay, in a girly bar strip. But there were 3 record bars, okay, right beside the office. So right pagka break time ng lunch, break time ng after office, we would go out and have the obligatory beers, etc., and get wasted. I'd pass by and I'd always come back to the apartment with records. So I had amassed a lot of them, and my last record before it was overtaken, before they became extinct, before CDs took over. Okay?
Yeah.
If some of you still remember what CDs are, okay. In '86 was the 85 was the last record I bought, By that time,
Wow.
I maybe had about a couple of thousand already. And I remember I went to Tower Records in 1986. I went on a trip to Tower Records in San Francisco, and we went down to Tower Records in Embarcadero Center, where I used to buy a lot of these nice records, jazz, funk, and rock and roll. And I see all these things, right? It says Tower Records, and then I see all these things with when CDs first came out, they had these horrendously tall, yung para hindi manakaw.
Oh,
Uh,
yung packaging nila, no? Yung packaging.
and the names of the artists were there. So I go, man, this looks weird. Everything looks like, what happened to all the records? So I went up to the manager and said, hey, um, what's the deal? Where are the records? He goes, records? You mean LPs? Oh, they're in the back. There's maybe 2 boxes. Nobody buys them anymore. You can help yourself for those 2 boxes. So I went back there and I helped myself to it. But then I realized no other store was selling LPs
Records.
anymore. So
Wow.
what? Fast forward to 2017, we were moving house to this particular house, and I was, my wife tells me, hey, there are these boxes. Before we throw them away, can you look at them? So I said, no, sige, tapon mo na yan. Then she goes, no, open it, kasi parang there's music stuff. So music stuff. Okay, I opened them. My gosh, she had packed my whole collection in about maybe 50 boxes. Okay, and it had these speakers, they're JBL L100s. Okay,
Wow.
yeah, it had my old Marantz 4400 amp. It had my old Technics SL12. It had my old Macintosh amp, and then it even had my LP12, my Lynn Sondek LP12. So she never threw any of this. So my gosh, I said, I need to set up a music room. So I set this thing up. Now, to your question, Johnny was the one who told me, hey, you know what? I was telling Johnny, hey, I'm setting up my stuff again. Can you help me? He goes, what took you so long? You know what you need to do? You need to catalog them, etc., etc. So what I've been doing is following Johnny's advice. Before, kasi they were all, they're all halo-halo, and I knew where they were. But,
Yeah.
nobody else knew. So one part of the stash is my Bill Evans collection. It's maybe all 60 of them. The other one is my whole Stan Getz collection. Maybe
Nice.
my Coltrane collection. Maybe I have, I'd say about 80. My Sonny Rollins collection is all in one rack. Maybe I have about 60. But yeah, man, it's a work in progress, but I'm getting there slowly.
Well, Joey, thank God that your wife did not listen to you when you said throw that all away. Thank God
Yeah,
for
somebody
Tinette.
maybe she was gonna throw them away and kunyari lang yan, and then she was gonna give it all to Johnny. Oh, di ba? Baka machamba pa si Johnny. Then
But
I'd be
you're
hanging
right.
out at his house.
You're right, Joey. Like I remember when CDs first came out because I grew up in the '80s, so I'm a cassette boy. I grew up with vinyls from my parents, but it never really caught on with me because I was not allowed kasi to touch them as a kid.
Yep.
So it was always like my dad would be playing his music, or my mom would, or my eldest sister would, but I was not allowed to touch the records. So I grew up feeling that it was always off limits to me. And then when cassettes came around, I started I amassed I had thousands of cassettes. And then when CDs came out and they started phasing out cassettes, I went through the same thing. I'm like, where are all the cassettes? What are these shiny things? There's no artwork there. I can't see the track list on the actual disc. When they first came out, they were just these shiny discs. There's no printing yet on the CDs. And I remember getting my first CD when I was in London. I got Led Zepp 2, and I said, wow, okay, let's see how this sounds. And my sister, who was living in London back then, she was doing Miss Saigon, had a CD player. So I'm like, oh, let's see how this sounds, And immediately I saw the difference between the cassette. I mean, I wasn't an audiophile by any measure back then, but I heard the difference between the cassette palang, which I didn't know, eventually I learned analog versus digital, And I learned also the terms when I became a sound engineer. Finally, the CDs were so compressed that I realized that I couldn't listen to them for very long, or else my ears started hurting when I'd be listening to all these CDs. So I went back to my cassettes, and then eventually, when they phased out the cassettes, I had no choice but to try to duplicate my collection with CDs. I'm a very recent vinyl collector, an LP collector. We're trying to amass a collection of the quintessential rock albums before we move on to other genres. But I can just imagine what your collections, together with Johnny, I would have to probably live in your houses for like weeks to listen to your albums.
You're welcome to come. You're welcome to come.
Johnny, when did you first start collecting? Because we heard Joey's story of, Girly Bard and Record Bard and Girly Bard and Record Bar in Hong Kong. Sorry, that's what I retained from your cuento. Johnny, when did you start collecting?
I always liked records, and I'm a collector at heart. Even when I was small, I used to collect 45 RPM records, singles.
Mm.
So that was my passion. Like I would go to Quiapo in Raon, and I would buy, because that's all I could afford, with my allowance. I would buy small records, 45 RPM, 7-inch records. And I collected songs. I did not collect albums. I collected songs.
Ah.
Yeah. So, it
Kasi
started with
45s lang eh. Kasi 45s
yeah,
lang.
45s. The ones I like. But even back then, my buying preferences, my listening preferences were always underground. I always liked the underground music that was happening, the counterculture music that was happening. And
Give us a
then
few examples. Give us a few examples. What do you mean by underground?
um Cream, like Badge, I would get that song because I liked it. I like the sound of the
Yeah.
guitar, stuff like that. And even earlier, like the Hollies, Bus Stop. No, I had a very varied taste in my listening habits. And come grade 5 or grade 6, I think, or something like that. Um, I saved up enough money to buy the first LP that I owned. That was Sergeant Pepper. I liked it because it was special. Because the Beatles ran into a lot of controversy, and then all of a sudden they didn't look like themselves anymore. They were dressed
Yeah.
differently,
Yeah. From
mustaches.
the shiny suits to
Yeah,
all of a
yeah.
sudden,
You
wow,
would
what's
say
all
this
this
was
color?
something else. Yeah, so it was unusual, and it really caught my interest. And then when I opened the cover and I saw the vinyl, it was just one continuous track from start to end. There were no independent tracks anymore. There were no separators. So I
Yeah.
said, "Wow, this is unusual." So it really caught my fancy, my imaginations just started getting more and more, like diverse, very very elaborate listening habits that I started developing. And then I discovered, all of these different things like backmasking, playing your record backwards. In fact, the turntable I bought, it's a Technics. No, it's a Technics clones, an OEM. It can actually play backwards. You can press a button and it will
You can
play
reverse?
the record in reverse. Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, no, no kidding, no kidding. It has that special feature. One of the things that attracted me to this super OEM record by Audio Technica. So yeah, but it's a Technics clone, but they improved on it some more.
Man, I
Yeah,
can just imagine the fun you'd have playing records backwards, because when backmasking first came out, I mean that's all I mean my parents were like, rock and roll is the devil's music. Although my
yeah, yeah.
dad
You
loved
remember that
Elvis
that that movie
Presley,
about Paul is
but
dead?
yes, Paul is dead, and then the Stairway to
Yeah,
Heaven, if you backmask it,
yeah, yeah.
it sings about the
All of
devil, and then all the Ozzy Osbourne albums were always accused of, you know,
yeah, yeah,
you can
yeah.
backmask it and all that. But that's something I must say I've never tried to do. So I'm gonna have to come and visit you so
The
we can play
devil's
some records backwards.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so you guys are excellent musicians. I've had the privilege of either being on stage with you or watching a lot of your shows. Um, Now, how can you say that your interest in your music and your vinyl collection, because I mean we think of music as our friends, right? Our albums, the physical albums that we have, are our friends. But can you say that these albums also influenced the music that you eventually played or started playing when you formed bands? Joey, let's go to you. Oh, ayan. Oh, he left. He's trying to connect. Oh, Johnny, let's start with you. Did these albums
Okay.
influence your music?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. The moment I started collecting albums instead of 7-inch singles, it changed my whole paradigm, because it was a complete experience. It wasn't just the sound, but it also the visual appeal of the cover. And while it's playing, you stare at the cover, and there's so many gimmicks that goes into the packaging, and it's a complete experience. And so it was the time for that particular trend. It was the psychedelic era,
Yeah.
and psychedelic in the most literal sense. So uh,
And we
you
all
know,
know what you mean by that. We all know
yeah,
what you
yeah.
mean.
We were enhancing our nervous systems, and
Yes.
it made the music sound better. And yeah, and all of those are engraved in my consciousness. Well, I knew when to say when, and I knew when to say no more. So I had a very balanced approach to my family entertainment. So so yeah, but the enjoyment had not left me. In fact, there was a time. This is a personal experience, a bit of a narrative. I hope you don't mind.
Good.
There was a time
Go.
when I felt what I was playing was no longer the trend, because I wasn't into this disco. I didn't want to play that kind of music. So I said, "What the heck? I don't want to do this." Because I was playing my own music, and then all of a sudden, it was no longer in demand. This was like decades ago, anyway. So this was back in the disco era, in the lounge era. So I gave up. I didn't want it anymore, and I became a record producer. And I got into OEM. I started producing stuff locally, and that's how I became very proficient. And because I was working in close proximity with production, with recording, with manufacturing, with packaging, with all of the different intricacies of the record industry itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I emerged from that, and I went back as an active musician, I had all of that background behind me. And then when the vinyl resurgence happened, because for a while it was all CDs, right? And
Yeah.
I have a huge CD collection in the other room, and they're all in proper case logic. Are you familiar with case logic?
Yes,
Those are
I have
DJ
several. I have several case logics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So all my collection, I have several hundred CDs of Case Logic. I have my
My
Copeland Case
problem now,
Logic.
my
I have my
problem now
Miles
with
Davis.
CDs. My
Mm.
problem now with CDs is that I have a lot of case logics. I have a lot, they're all categorized and everything, but I don't have a single working CD player at home.
I have a few.
Yeah,
Now I have a turntable and Spotify.
hmm
So
that's good.
my
If
CDs are just
if
my
if
CDs are
if
just
worst comes
gathering dust.
if worst comes to worst, you can use your DVD player as your CD player.
Well, that doesn't work either because now we have Netflix. So it's funny when this
Yeah.
new technology takes over, and you tend to you subscribe to this new technology. You tend to forget. At least in my case, I tend to forget the old technology to the point where, like, wow, like my laptop right now has a CD drive, but it doesn't work anymore because I haven't cleaned it in years.
Okay.
Because now I'm busy playing either Spotify or LPs. So
Yeah.
it's funny how the technology, when it overtakes one format or another. I remember when mini discs were a format. When mini discs first came out, and they were releasing albums on mini discs. I'm like, what the hell is this? It looks like a small floppy disk, and that didn't last. That didn't last very long. But I have a. It's funny enough. I have a working mini disc player, but I don't have a working CD player. You know?
Yeah, there's this fellow in YouTube. I follow his channel very steadily, and he has a very big problem. He's probably got one of the best record collections ever. I mean,
Wow.
he's a real authority, and I listen to him all the time because he always has something new. And when he talks about his records, old and new, he speaks with a lot of authority. He really knows his stuff. But anyway, there was one situation where he co-hosted his show with his son, and his son was actually very truthful, and he said, "Dad, I'm not interested in your records." He said, "I, you know," and I said, "My God, what's he gonna do with all of his records? He's gonna donate it to a museum or something. What's gonna happen?"
Oh.
I think that's a problem for a lot of us. What are we gonna do with all of this stuff? Uh, you know,
Well, I'm here. I'm here. Robert Key is there. Robert Tuason is
yeah.
there. There are a lot of people who want your collections. But let's
Well,
throw this to
the
Joey
best
now.
way is to
Oh,
cultivate
good.
someone who's young, who's interested in the same kind of music that
Yes.
you are and the same format that you are interested in. And I think the new generation is missing out on something very important, which is headroom. It's a concept. Headroom is a concept. During the CD days, like the compression wars,
Yes.
like you have 0 dB and everything is like there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's no more headroom.
Yeah.
Uh, it's so compressed. There's no more dynamics because it can't go any further than
Yeah.
than than
Er- er-
where it is. The loudness
Like when
wars.
when like when they mastered it, it's almost like on the verge of the redna, and that's where they
Yeah, it's,
stayed
it's there, it's there, and then if you
constantly.
go beyond that, it's distorting already, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
0 dB is the limit. It's something you can push it a little bit more, but it, it, it's crazy. And then now, in fact, Apple came out several years ago, or 5 years ago, with a standard called the MFIT,
Hmm.
mastered for iTunes, because people were starting to complain that whatever it was that they downloaded from iTunes, it sounded distorted. And so
Yeah.
now Apple would impose some kind of a standard that it has to be mastered by a certified MFIT engineer, certified
Yeah.
MFIT audio engineer, to master it for them before they're able to upload it. I don't know if Spotify imposes the same kind of standard, but that's what's happening because of the loudness wars. And I'm afraid even right now people are losing track of what fidelity is all about because they don't know
Mm.
what headroom is all about. So
Yeah.
everything is there. So the beautiful thing about analog listening is that you can actually hear the fluctuation of the dynamics of the music, from loud to soft, from big to small, all of
Yes.
those little things. You listen to Led Zeppelin, you can actually hear the guitar going like this. There's
Yep.
all these
Yeah, that's
different
true.
instruments. It all goes everywhere like that. You can actually hear the whole sound stage going on around you, and it's amazing. And you can't do that with the stuff that's happening digitally. And I don't know. How do you bridge the gap between the old and the new? That's a big question.
Well, I think like going from the old to the new to back to the old. I personally had to realize that when I finally got the Discman and I was listening to the CDs, and the compression and the loudness wars were going on. I realized because I would be on my Walkman listening to cassettes all day long when I was much younger. All day long. And I would be perfectly fine with either popping in a new album or just playing the shit out of this one album that I love, which we always do. Or minsan, if you like a song, or rewind, play. And I could listen to it all day. When I got a Discman and these compression wars were happening, I realized that my ears started hurting after a few hours. Like,
Yeah,
maybe on the second repeat of the album, sumasakit na yung tenga ko because of all that compression and all that information, being crammed into my ears. Now,
yeah,
headroom, Headroom is a
Yeah.
beautiful concept because I mean, you call it headroom, but I feel like when I listen to an LP on vinyl that is recorded and released for the purpose of vinyl, like the old albums, right? I can hear the room that they recorded in. It's not in a digital space. It's the room that they actually recorded it in. And like you said in the Led Zepp albums, you can hear the the guitar with on the Jimi Hendrix albums. You can feel him going closer and further from the mic, which adds more dynamics and gives it room to breathe, in my opinion. But before we go on to the intricacies between like analog and digital, I want to ask Joey because he disappeared for a while. Joey, were the albums you were listening to as a young man, did they influence your choice of music that you wanted to play as a guitar player?
Okay. Most of the most memorable albums that I'm going to pull out. In fact, is it time? Can I begin to pull out my top 10 right now?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go to the
Um,
top 10, pare.
yeah, one of the very first albums, like you, I wasn't allowed to touch the record player of my dad. Okay, when I was a kid,
Mm.
and so I had to wait for him to leave the house. When he left the house, of course, he had all these vinyls there,
Yeah.
and I saw this album, which was something by Tony Bennett. Okay, I remember the album, and it had a song called "Candy Kisses." My dad would play that over and over and over again, and my mom, when my dad would leave, she'd play it over and over again. And it's the same album that has "I Left My Heart in San Francisco." Okay,
Ah.
so I looked at it, and it looked. I put it on the. I tried to do what they were doing. I must have been about maybe 11 years old, so I was finally able to get the tone arm onto the record. Like probably scratched it up so much also, and this glorious sound came out of the amplifier. Okay, I was able to listen to it. I said, "My gosh, I mean, this is so fantastic! I can't wait for my parents to leave the house now, so that I can start listening to this." So anyway, when my dad finally got a very good sound system at that time, like the amp of which I still have in the back, it's a Marantz 4400, which has
Wow.
been, I remember it from my high school days, and I inherited it from him. Um, and it stayed for a while. Johnny knows this. I had a 4, 8, and 16 track analog tape recording studio, but that's another story. Maybe we'll have to do another 5-hour interview for that. But your question, most of the most memorable albums that I have, are actually the ones that shaped my musical preferences, and are actually goalposts and milestones in my journey. As you
Yeah.
said, when I was in high school, like every other high school kid, um, everybody wanted to play guitar. So I figured, hey, I better start trying to play guitar. This was maybe I was second year high school. And so there were always guys in Ateneo who were they're always like that. In school, there are always guys who are better than you. And you're always thinking, my gosh, how can I play Ventura Highway? How can walang jingle magazine pa nun. There were guys who knew how to do the intro to like Stairway to Heaven, and they'd be the most popular guys in town, and during recess time, all the kids would be crowding around them. And how do you do that? Dun, 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 yeah. So anyway, what I was listening to, like most kids, was a band called Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And this album is memorable for me because the licks that I caught from Jimmy Page in my early developmental years as a guitar player were actually licks that I had listened to from Led Zepp 1 and 2. Now, this album is a box set, okay?
Yeah.
Right? And it was recorded in the BBC studios, okay, in 1969. They had just done their first American tour, and they were on the cusp of superstardom. In fact, 3 months after some of these sessions were recorded, that's when they started to record Led Zeppelin 2. So they were not the super group that they were known to be yet, okay? They were just on the cusp of really, really, really breaking out. Now, there are no overdubs. There are no studio tricks because they just came into the studio And they dig this. They were doing the soundtrack, the background music for a show called what's that car show? The one of Jeremy Clarkson. Okay, Top Gear.
Top
Okay.
Gear.
Now, it wasn't Jeremy Clarkson yet, but believe it or not, Top Gear supposedly has been around since the 60s. And
Wow.
they did some of the music for that. Some of the earlier episodes of Top Gear 20 years ago used to have Allman Brothers, Jessica as their soundtrack, their intro. Well, anyways,
Wow.
that's Zeppelin. Okay, so I, as a young guitar player in second year high school, I taught myself the licks of Jimmy Page, and Zeppelin was now, like everybody else. I was listening to Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Johnny Winter. I was listening to Mountain. I was listening to Hendrix. But there was one guy in school who said, man, you need to listen to this group. Okay. And when I got up, I was able to borrow a copy of the LP, and I took it up, but I never gave it back to him. Okay. Okay. This is not the LP, but let me tell you, when I heard this, my blood rushed to my head, and it was never the same. Okay.
Yun, Machine Head.
Machine Head. Okay. When I heard Richie Blackmore, okay, it was not only the first time that I ever heard anybody who played like that with that kind of sound and that kind of approach. It was like a classical jazz and rock approach, which was orchestral but thematic in nature.
Okay.
And the good thing about Deep Purple, a lot of people say that and I firmly believe this, Deep Purple was one of the first prog, what people call prog now. That was them before. I'm talking about the time 1970, 1971. If you hear this today, even today, I was listening to this morning, and my hair was standing on end. The nice thing about vinyl is that, as you said, you don't fast forward. You don't skip. You play the whole album, and that album for me is so iconic that I can listen to it all day up to today. I remember every lick. I remember what pickup position he was on for every lick. I remember what amp setting he was using. So it's so memorable for me. A few years after that, I was fortunate to get drafted from a rock and roll band that I had into a group called Mother Earth, and they were much older than me, 7-8 years older than me. And they were listening to a lot of more progressive stuff. In fact, one of the guys that was hanging out, there was our piano player in Mother Earth, Ed Jose. He had just come back to Berkeley. He was a Berkeley dude. He was a piano player, and he was a composer. And he said, man, you're listening to Deep Purple. That's great stuff, but you need to listen to this stuff. And he gave me a copy of this album. Okay. Chick Corea, Return to Forever, Light as a Feather. Still gives me goosebumps to this day, because as Mother Earth, I'm dating myself, okay? I was in fourth year high school, but we had just won the Battle of the Bands then, okay? And we got a gig in a club called Pension Filipina. And they wanted us to play all this stuff. And, we played 6 tunes out of the 8 tunes here. We did these tunes. So I remember, there are no guitars on this album, but you can imagine from rock and roll and to semi-prog stuff, I started to play this stuff, totally immersed into this music. Okay. Now, our bass player then, okay, was a guy named Colby de la Calzada.
Yes, Colby.
Our percussionist was Yuli Avante. And after Ed Jose left, we had a very young guy who was 16. Okay. Some people might know him. He's kind of famous. His name's Louis Ocampo. He was our keyboard player. Okay. But I'm telling you, he's a really, really heavy cat. And he was the one who gave me this album. John Scofield. He says, man, if you like Chick Corea, this John Scofield live in Berlin, you listen to this stuff. And it totally John Scofield is probably one of my favorite guitar players. And it totally changed my whole paradigm. I told myself, you know what? It's not about whatever it is. It's not about Chick Corea. It's about John Scofield now. You know. The next album I'm gonna pull out is so memorable for me because I had been out of school maybe about 2 years already. I had just graduated, and my younger brother and 2 younger sisters were studying in San Francisco. And we visited them. It was one of those Christmases that the family flew there. So I went, and and he goes, you know what? It's Saturday night. Okay, you want to borrow the keys to the car? You're free to go and bring some of the cousins and who live right beside them. And so I talked to some of my cousins, my elder cousins, and we convinced one of them, okay, drive us to the city because we have tickets to this show, and we watched this band. Okay, Tower of Power. Man, this was a life-changing experience for me. We went to this club. Okay, that you couldn't buy tickets. There was no such thing as online tickets before. You had to go to the box office and make pila and buy your tickets. So the show was 9 o'clock. But because I knew Tower of Power, I had been listening to them for 4 or 5 years already. In fact, I was trying to copy some of what the guitar player was doing. And so I knew their songs by heart. We made pila for about 3 hours to get in, okay? So we get into the club, okay? And we were late because ang haba ng pila, wala na, standing room only. The room was packed with about 500 people or 600 people. A room that was only good for 200. It was standing room only. And they were really, really, really killing it. I went up right on stage and I was amazed and totally blown away by how tight they were, how powerful they sounded. I mean, from the get-go, I had goosebumps. All right. That was a life-changing experience for me. After that, I started to listen to more older stuff. So this guy is actually my favorite piano player, Bill Evans.
Bill Evans, yeah.
And my favorite album of his, this is a box collection, and it's the Complete Village Vanguard recordings from 1961. It's 4 discs, and it has him and his trio, and it's music for the soul. Okay, I can play it over and over and over again. Next album, my favorite guitar player of all time, Wes Montgomery. Okay, but these are early recordings from. It's a box set.
Yeah.
From 1949 to 1958. Okay, Wes Montgomery had the gift of making complex songs and even pop songs make them sound interesting. He made the most complex chord changes sound simple and pleasing to the ear. Some musicians have the gift of playing intricate stuff. Well, Wes had the gift of playing intricate music, but making it simple for listeners to latch on to. I always like that. He always, when he plays, he's like Bill Evans. You know, he doesn't hit your intellect. He hits you with the gut.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, one of my favorite sax players is tenor sax player named Dexter Gordon. This album, Our Man in Paris, with the great Bud Powell on piano. Fantastic. Dexter Gordon, you listen to him, he's always several milliseconds behind the beat, and it makes it so malagkit and so funky and so soulful. Maybe that's why I like Scofield also. He plays behind the beat. Okay.
Interesting.
You'll notice a lot of my favorites are not guitar players, they're piano players. I don't know why, but McCoy Tyner, piano player of a guy named John Coltrane, the John Coltrane Quartet. But this is his solo album, and he plays with Lee Morgan, my favorite trumpet player, aside from Miles Davis. But a lot of people know McCoy Tyner as somebody who plays with a powerful, frenetic style. But if you listen to this, you can almost hear a pin drop. You know,
Wow.
like Johnny was talking about dynamics.
Yeah.
This is so evocative and soulful. This one, I can't say enough good things about this thing. I wish I had discovered this thing. What this was this? I think this was recorded in 1961. So I would have been what, an embryo yet at that time. So wala pa. We're getting to the end of it, so a little patience.
No,
My
I'm taking notes, man. I'm taking notes. I'm reviewing the show afterwards, and I'm gonna look up all these artists, and that's what I love about doing the show. I get all these recommendations because if you guys listen to it, and I love what you guys play, then I should be listening to it.
This is something that my favorite trumpet player of all time. Okay, Miles Davis. It's an album called "Someday My Prince Will Come," and it's got my favorite players here. It's got John Coltrane. It's got Hank Mobley. It's got Wynton Kelly, Paul Chambers, Jimmy Cobb. But he does all these nice tunes from. This is a Broadway musical, right, Johnny? Someday My Prince Will Come.
Yes, yeah,
Got
that's a
Someday
musical.
My Prince Will Come. Old Folks. I Thought About You, Theo. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. A lot of people know Miles for what he did in terms of changing music by melding different styles and making it fusion. But the Miles that really hits me in the gut is the Miles
Yeah.
Miles.
Someday My Prince Will Come was from Snow White.
Yes,
Actually, that album was a political statement because remember the reference to Snow White, and he has a black woman, a beautiful black woman on the cover. So
wow.
the parody there and the sarcasm. So it's
You
a
need to get
political.
a copy of that, yeah.
And this was
Yeah,
in the 60s, and this was in the 60s.
he was making a
So,
political
so the
statement.
civil rights movement was just starting,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
or basically in
He
full
was doing
swing.
it in a very subtle way, and Miles was a very smart fellow. He's very intelligent, very wise man.
Anyway,
So
I'm
anyway,
going on to my
I'm
last
sorry.
album. This is last but not least, and this is probably one of my. All of those are my favorites, but this one, "Blue Train" by John Coltrane. Okay,
Yeah.
it's got Lee Morgan on trumpet, Curtis Fuller on trombone, John Coltrane, of course, on tenor sax, the great Kenny Drew on piano, and Philly Joe Jones. This is a special album. It's green vinyl, limited edition. I haven't even opened it, but I have um, 7 different copies from 7 different pressings of this thing, and I've worn out all 6. So this one is staying in its jacket. Now, what do I like about this thing? A lot of folks like the frenetic and the fusion Coltrane, but the Coltrane I like is this Coltrane. Okay, the tunes that he did here, "Blue Train" is a great soulful blues. "Moment's Notice." I used to play this song. In fact, I learned the solo of McCoy Tyner on this, of Kenny Drew on this thing. I actually transcribed it on guitar, and I can't say I can play it properly, but that's how much I love this tune. And even "Lazy Bird," for example, is another tune that he did on this thing, and I spent hours and hours and hours trying to copy this until I got an album of Pat Martino, who did it. Pat Martino, the great jazz guitar player, who I had the great fortune of seeing in New York about 5 years ago. Before, wala na, he's sick now, so he can't perform anymore. But I heard him play all these tunes, Lazy Bird, and fantastic. So that's my. I could have pulled out a lot more albums that were more obscure than these, but these are close to my heart because if I was going to be marooned on a desert island, I would not take one album. I'd take all these, and I still have one more, but I'll wait for you to ask that question.
I think that's fantastic, Joey, because I mean we've gone from Led Zepp and Deep Purple Machine Head to John Coltrane. What a musical journey that now I feel like I understand you a little bit more as a guitar player, as a musician, as an artist. because hearing your influences and basically your journey in 10 albums is such a big deal, because when we see our favorite artists live, even back in the day, where you find a band where you love, that you love, and you listen to their albums, incessantly and constantly, and then you start researching on them, and then you start, I call it a time machine. You start listening to the stuff they listen to, and then you fall in love with that, and then you listen to the stuff that these guys listen to, and then you go back, you keep on going back in time, just to figure out how your favorite artist had arrived here. And on that journey, it expands exponentially, because you're listening to, if the Doors listen to this artist and I'm listening to this artist, what did these the guys listen to? So all of a sudden you've got all these influences, but the seed of one key artist. And I love the fact that you started with Led Zeppelin. Now, before we go to Johnny's top 10, I want to show you guys three albums which I absolutely love. And I am of a different orientation because I'm a singer. So I'm a vocalist. So for me, the guitar riffs, I mean, for me, I absolutely love Led Zepp, but they're not the ones that got me into rock and roll, simply because I could not sing them. I could not sing any Led Zepp tunes, because that's Robert Plant
Too
songs.
high. Yeah, it's
I
too
mean,
high.
that's way too high. I would have to have way too much scotch to even attempt to sing that high. And what got me into rock and roll was the Doors. And out of when we were chatting last night, Johnny, when asked about my favorite, because I'm a Doors man through and through. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday or even today, but I know absolutely all the songs of the Doors and all the lyrics to all their songs. I can sing all their songs. In fact, when Periodico, the band of Vin Dancel, did a Doors tribute night in 70s Bistro, I was asked to turn in three songs that I would like to sing. He invited me to sing, and I turned in three songs of The Doors, which I've always loved to sing live. And one of those, of course, was The End. When will you ever get a chance to sing The End with a regular band, right? And since it was a Doors tribute night, we were great. And during rehearsals, I remember during rehearsals, Vin Dancel was like, Pare, I can't sing this. Can you sing this? Do you know it? Yes. Do you know this? Yes. Do you know this? Yes. It's like, then he just gives me a look, and I'm like, yeah, I know all the fucking songs. I can sing all the fucking songs of the Doors, right? But this is my favorite album. This is the Morrison Hotel album. Um, of course, I have all their albums, naturally, because I'm a big Doors fan. And I just love the way these albums just fold out. You don't get that on CDs. You don't get it on Spotify, man. You know, but this particular album really hooked me because of the song Roadhouse Blues, which when I had these guys on cassette, that's the song I said, that's the song I can sing. I mean, there's Break On Through, there's Light My Fire, yes, but Roadhouse Blues is my song. That
Yep.
was actually the very first song that I ever jammed with a band on stage. I got drunk one night in Fire and Rain, the bar of Eddie Rocha, and Eddie Rocha came up to me and he said, "Oh, Jamie, I heard you sing. You want to sing with the band?" And the band was Coco Jam, with Sila Rolly and Jun Lupito and Sila Rico Velez, and Bosho was still on drums, right? And so I said, "Yeah, of course, I'm drunk now." I'm like, "Yeah, sure, you're daring me to sing, I'll sing." And I get up on stage, and Rolly asks me, "So what songs are we gonna sing? What do you know?" And I don't know. I mean, primarily when you first encounter Coco Jam, it's all Bob Marley stuff. It's all reggae, right? I didn't know shit about reggae. So I said, "Well, I know all the songs of the Doors. What do you want to do?" And Jun Lupito started the intro of Roadhouse Blues. So that was my introduction to the very first time I played with a band live on stage. And that is the opening song of this album, Roadhouse Blues. So I absolutely love the Doors. When Johnny asked me last night what your favorite album the Doors was, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to pick just one. It's hard, right? It's hard.
It's hard.
But this is the one, because this translated to the feel, the power, the sexuality of that first time I ever went up on stage and I felt the power of rock and roll. And I said, okay, this has to be in my life. I'm primarily a theater actor, but that was the moment when I jammed with Coco Jam and I sang Roadhouse Blues. That was the moment I decided, wait, I need rock and roll in my life, live rock and roll in my life. Now, the second album I want to show you is another favorite band of mine. Of course, is the Rolling Stones. So, as a vocalist, right, Mick Jagger is not as high as Robert Plant, right? But I just love raw. I just love the raw sexuality of it and the cleverness of their lyrics. And this album, this particular album, when I did eventually some research, because when you look at it, Exile on Main Street, what the hell does that mean? All these biographies weren't available to us yet. All these books weren't available to me yet, and I had just discovered them. And truth be told, I did not like the Rolling Stones when I first heard them. But because Jun Lupito, and I was playing with Jun Lupito in the Bodhisattvas in the 90s, June kept on busting out all these Stones tunes, which I had to learn. So I'm like, fine, okay, let's not learn these Doors songs. I'll learn these Rolling Stones songs. And eventually, there was one time when we were in Tagaytay, Johnny, and we were adjusting our neural pathways in Tagaytay and trying to connect to the universe a little bit more. And on acoustic guitar, we were in the Tagaytay, parang Highlands Park or something. It was a People's Park in Tagaytay, and we were flying. And he just started playing on his acoustic guitar. He brought his acoustic guitar out. He started playing Soul Survivor, which is a big band tune, right? But the when he distilled it into his acoustic guitar and started playing it, and he started singing, and I started singing along with it because we had been listening to the album several times. I fell in love with the Rolling Stones. And as a vocalist, that's between Jim Morrison and Mick Jagger, that's pretty much a lot of my influences. Now, this third album, and I'm only going to show three. I'm only going to show three. All right. Now, this album, and this vocalist, this singer, was a huge influence on me. And I wish I could sing like her. But it's the rawness of it, the rawness of her voice, the power of her voice, the emotion in her voice is something that is so powerful that was not present in that I didn't find in either the Stones or the Doors, and that's of course Janis Joplin. And this is her Cheap Thrills album with the Big Brother and the Holding Company. Now
That's
we
great.
found this album. I love this album. It's got Summertime. It's got Peace of My Heart. But I love the cover because it's by R. Crumb. The guy who made all those like dirty comics before, and I loved it because they had to fight for this album cover. And we found when me and Gold, my wife, when we went to New York, we got lost, which is part of our itinerary. Whenever we travel, there we have a very set itinerary, and there's for like 1 or 2 hours where we deliberately get lost, and we got lost in the Village in New York, and we encountered a what it didn't look like a record store because it had all these weird ethnic instruments hanging from it. So we said, decide, okay, let's go inside anyway. And sure enough, he had a record section there, the owner, who makes all these weird ethnic instruments. And he started chatting us up and asking us where we were from. And we were browsing through, and I was having to choose, which albums, because we're on a limited budget. So which albums do we want to get? And when I found this and I pulled it out, and he's like, oh, look, that's the first album you pull out. Do you know that I was part of the Big Brother and the Holding Company, in the early days before they started recording their album? And so he started launching into all these stories about how it was working with the band, working with Janis Joplin, and how he refused um, to go the corporate way when they were signed by a record label. This is one of the purest guys. He said, no, I don't want to go that way. So he actually backed out of the band to make all these ethnic instruments, put up a record store, and become the repository. When I asked about him, he was the repository of all these strange stories from this era. And I said, well, I got to get this album because now I have a good story that comes along with it. And he said, you know what? For you, I'm gonna give you $5 off, which is even better because he knocked off $5 off the price, and it's in great condition. It's a great album, but as a singer, I can't. Of course, you hardly ever encounter anybody who can sing like her. But the raw emotion that Janis Joplin, who's on the back cover, right? The raw emotion that Janis Joplin um, sings with. And if you watch videos of her, that's the kind of thing that has influenced me as uh, a musician or as a singer when I do it live. When we play music, I think our responsibility, like you said earlier, Joey, it has to hit you in the gut. And
Yeah.
that's the raw emotion that this woman sings in. You have the articulations, the poetic articulations of Morrison. You have the calculated moves of Jagger, but Joplin didn't give a shit what she looked like. She didn't give a shit sometimes she was flat, sometimes she was sharp, but the emotion was true. And I
You
think
froze
that's
in the moment. Yeah.
yeah, it's the moment. And that's what I've always strived for as a performer, as a musician, as a singer. And of course, when you're on your third set and you've had a lot of scotch or bourbon or beers, it's easier to get to. But the emotional moment, when you find that emotional moment on stage, when you're performing in front of people, it really feels like the room melts away, and you're just there in that moment with everybody else on stage. And it's such a collective experience that when it translates to the audience, there's nothing else like it. That's why I miss playing live, pare. I miss playing live. So those are the three albums I'm going to show.
So do we.
Those
Great
are
albums. Wow,
the three
fantastic album.
albums. The three albums I'm going to show. Because my collection pales to you guys. So now we're going to go to
Johnny,
Johnny.
what do you have?
Johnny, we're going to see your top 10, buddy.
I don't know if they're 10. Uh, my listening habit is very collective, very eclectic. So I it has no flow. It's not from jazz to rock or rock to jazz. They're all mixed. So I'll just pick them out at random. Uh, but you mentioned the Stones. So are you familiar with this record? I don't know if you can see it.
Yes. Yeah. Can you put it? There we go. Yeah, man.
This one, this one. I
Black
don't
and
I
know
blue.
if you
love
can
that.
see.
I don't have that yet, but I'm going
Yeah,
to get that.
this is the first record with Ron Wood in it.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a complete set of all the records they made from start to here. Of I have all the records they made with Brian Jones, and I have all the records they made with Mick Taylor. I have everything. But Mick Taylor quit, and they were holding auditions, and there are several guitar players here, but this is where they decided that they wanted Ron Wood.
Yeah,
Now,
Mick Taylor couldn't handle being part of the Rolling Stones.
no, he couldn't handle the lifestyle anymore. It was
Yeah,
just too
Yep.
yeah.
much. Uh, anyway, I wish I could focus this a little bit more. What am I gonna do? This one here.
We can see it.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah, we can see it.
sorry. Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Uh, okay. Anyway, there's a story to this record because
We see your hand.
there's a story to this record because of the design. It's a fold out.
Yeah.
It's a gatefold. See, like that. See, it's a panorama of the band. See, that's let me see if I can show it to you properly.
That's so rare that Jagger allowed his face to be just half.
That's what I'm driving at. You see, because if you open it,
Yon, gitna siya.
gitna siya. Do you see it? Let me
Yeah,
see here.
yeah, I can see that. I can see it when you fold it out.
You see there? Uh, Paano ba to? I'm having a hard time focusing it, but
It's okay, we can see it. If you put it in front of your face, there we
yes,
go. Yeah,
it
you can see it.
folds.
Yeah.
It folds right that. See, his face is. I don't know. I'm such an idiot when it comes to these things. There you go. Uh, well, anyway, there. I'm showing it
Yeah.
properly. I think. Anyway, his face is half. Do you see it
Yes.
there? Uh, his eye is right on the spine.
Yeah.
His eye is right on the spine. See there? So there you go. Uh, it's and actually Paul McCartney is coming out with a book, and he's it's 2 volumes, and there's a like what you call it? Uh, there's a slider. There's a word for it. Uh, 2 books together like that,
Mhm.
and one half of the face is here, and the other half of the face is here. And when you
Ah.
put them together, you see the face. You see the complete face, right? So it's a rock and roll concept. So anyway, back in the day, I wanted to. I produced a Pinoy rock album called "The Best of Pinoy Rock,"
Yes.
and it's a double album. So I packaged it similar to Black and Blue, which is that Rolling Stones record, and I put one of the guys in the middle. Same concept. I imitated it. I'm not gonna show the face of the guy whose face I divided between front and back, but I got a lot of hell for it be- because he said that I desecrated his face by splitting his face. I said, man, that's rock and roll. You
Dude,
wouldn't
Mick Jagger
accept
did
it.
it. Mick Jagger did it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay
So
lang.
so
Johnny,
anyway,
I need a copy of that record, man. I need a
Hey,
copy of that
Johnny, I
record.
this
think
is
I
this is
think
probably the rarest. This is probably the rarest rock Pinoy rock album
I
there
know,
is.
dude. I had it on cassette, pare. I had it on cassette. I've
Johnny,
never been
One,
able
one,
to
one.
find it.
This is a double album. This is a gatefold. Yeah.
Oh,
I
my
think I'm
volume
playing
one.
on that album. I
You
think
played
Uh,
on that album, Joey?
yeah. In some didn't you put some of Pop's Daddy was there?
yeah, you play in one track with Pop's Daddy Pop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
Govinda.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
now I
Yeah.
need that
Yeah.
album even more. Ah,
Yeah. It's got like Wally Pepe with his own Summer Wind. I was the one who released Summer Wind and Dr. Quack.
I did
Anak
not know
Bayan,
that. I
Nagpapalit
did
ng
not know
Tuwago,
that.
Sagang Plaka. I was the one who released it. I don't really get much credit for it, but I was the one responsible for releasing it. Maria Cafra, it's Resley's birthday today, by the way.
That's right. That's
I
right.
I released Cool Ka Lang Pares here, Kapalaran, Pangako. Well, of course, Mike with Lucky Salaya. I got Sampaguita here,
Yeah.
Juan de la Cruz also, of course, and a couple of other artists. But but the guy
Do you
whose
know? Do
face
you
I
know?
divided,
You
he
know,
hated it.
Johnny, that
He got a
cassette
lot of
of the
help.
that cassette was released volume 1, volume 2.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction to Pinoy rock because
Really?
when I was jamming with June Lupito in the 90s, I started
Yeah.
meeting, his friends. So that's Pepe Smith. And I had
Yeah.
no idea who the fuck these guys were. I
Yeah.
was just jamming. I was just jamming with them, and then
That was the
finally I got a
time.
copy of
That was the
volume 1 and
time.
volume 2.
Pepe and I actually helped me a lot putting this record together. I was going to his house in Kamuning, and I met his grandma and all of that, and shared a lot of photos with me. And Pepe and I were actually close. I don't advertise these things. I don't talk about these things. But we were. I met him when I was 19 or 20 years old. When he was still like, he wasn't even in Juan de la Cruz yet. He just came back from Japan, playing with Speed Blue and Shinky. Uh, so I was just like a Forrest Gump. I was just in the right place at the right time with the right people. You know. Anyway, so that was my Pinoy rock adventure. But I had to bring out this Rolling Stones record because I experimented with the half face, and it was a very successful album. But I got some flack for it because I divided some. Well, he's not a rocker anymore. He's a lounge artist. So never mind.
Okay, now
Anyway,
now now I'm gonna, now I'm gonna research on that gatefold, and I'm gonna find
I
out
won't mention his name because
whose face you
it's
didn't
not
want to
popular.
show.
Yeah, and look, there was a time in the 70s. Well, I think Paul McCartney started it. He After he broke up, after the Beatles broke up, he released an album where he played all the instruments. And of course, he got criticized for that because parang swapang mo naman, lahat naman ng instrumento tinugtog mo, you didn't get other people to play with you. It's like an ego trip, no? But anyway, there were other people who followed suit. And one of those was this guy. I don't know if you recognize. This is called Intervisions.
Oh yeah,
Stevie Wonder.
Innovation.
He
Yes.
played. I have. This is perhaps my favorite Stevie Wonder album. I have so many copies of this record, different pressings. I have so many of them because each one is different. They sound different depending on who the mix or mastering engineer is.
Yeah.
And no, I wasn't really into the early Stevie Wonder with all the fingertips and baby, everything is. But when he did this, my goodness, he was different. And then he followed it up with this particular record. It's called Talking
Yeah.
Book. I don't know if you're familiar with this one. Jeff Beck plays with him here.
No way. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So and this was early on. This was right early on. When after the Jeff Beck group split up, and he was on the verge of forming Beck, Bogart, and Appice. But
Mhm.
anyway, yeah. So and Stevie Wonder was on the road. This was before he started doing the commercial stuff. But there was this particular period where Stevie Wonder was really very, very progressive, and he was hanging out with people like Herbie Hancock and things like that. And the culmination of that is this particular record. It's called Songs in the Key of Life,
Yes. That
which
is.
is a hit.
That's a
In
big
fact, I
one.
love this record so much.
That's the big one.
I have several copies of this record. Yeah. Well, that was my Stevie Wonder, and I love the guy because a lot of today's music comes from Stevie Wonder. All of those chords. You listen to Jay Durias, you listen to the stuff that all those beautiful chords that he plays. That's all Stevie Wonder. All of these all of the new jazz and all the all these neo soul stuff that you hear. That's all Stevie Wonder. That all came from Stevie Wonder. He
Nice.
he invented this stuff. So anyway, yeah, okay. So that's it for Stevie Wonder. Uh, Joey was talking about a lot of jazz, and for me, this particular record changed the face of jazz. It's called
That's
Giant
that's
Steps. I have two copies. One is mono and one is stereo.
and that's
Uh,
Coltrane.
yeah. This one's called Giant Steps. Uh, Initially when I started listening to Coltrane, I was enchanted by A Love Supreme, Supreme, A Love
Supreme. Yeah.
Supreme, A Love. That very modal kind. Then he takes off. This one is more like frenetic. It's very intellectual. It's not so much feeling. It's very intellectual, but the inventions that he created with this particular album resonates until today. There will be no Michael Brecker. There will be no Dewey Redman. There will be no, hundreds of saxophonists. Oh, what they do with their instruments from this particular album. Uh, uh, it's very interesting because when Coltrane recorded this record, they used two tape recorders simultaneously. So one was recording him live stereo, and one was recording him live mono. And it's
Wow.
different because if it's mono, you really hear him at the center.
Yeah.
and the instruments are on the side, left and right. But if you hear him on stereo, he's panned to one side, and you can hear the other instruments more. So it depends what you want to listen to. So I decided I wanted to get both. Um, yeah, you go to Amazon, you can't find these variants anymore. You'll probably have to wait for the next one. And then, since I mentioned John Coltrane, maybe I should mention Miles Davis. Uh, these two albums are the same with two different covers.
Okay.
They came out simultaneously. I have no idea why they came out with two variant covers. This is called a tribute to Jack Johnson. This is Jack Johnson, Miles, and this particular pose of Miles is very, very iconic.
Yeah.
Eventually, became his, eventually became his what you call it, his emblem. You know,
Yeah.
it became his trademark. And this is the other one. I think this is the soundtrack version, and this is the album version. Exactly the same record with John McLaughlin, Herbie Hancock. You know,
Fantastic.
yeah. I used to subscribe to the Miles Davis forums, and for a fact, everybody says that this is without any doubt Miles Davis at the peak of his powers. Nothing compares to the performance that he did here, because the range, the dynamics, the power, the sheer power that he did here, and it's amazing. This is an amazing record. If you can find a copy of this record, grab it, because it's really like, and it's not the usual jazz. Doomba, 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 doomba. This is really in your face. This is almost like a rock record, but it's jazz.
Nice.
Uh,
Nice.
yeah, I used to listen to this and fall asleep and wake up and listen to it again, and I used to listen to it all the time, and it just became a part of my consciousness. Okay, now Pat Metheny. Everybody likes Pat Metheny one way or another, because he brought country western to jazz. He was a country western boy. He came from Missouri, I mean, from the and I don't know. He became a jazz musician. He ended up playing with Gary Burton, and then he ended up in Germany doing records for ECM Records in Germany, and he did a lot of very, very popular records in Germany. And many of those records are still around. They have been reissued time and again. But several years later, he jumped ship. He wasn't recording in Germany anymore. He went back to America, and he started recording for Geffen.
Wow.
But unfortunately, when he jumped ship, it was already the beginning of the compact disc, the CD revolution, which unseated the popularity of vinyl for a very, very long time. So many of the records that he made for Geffen are either out of print or were never made. There were no vinyl releases except these two, and they're
Wow.
both out of print. And this one's called Still Life Talking and Question and Answer. And I think for my money, I think these are the rarest Pat Metheny LPs ever made. Uh, it's gonna be next to impossible to find this in. You can probably go to eBay, but even in eBay, I checked time and again, it's not available. I belong to the Pat Metheny discussion group. I keep saying, why doesn't it get reissued? It never
Yeah,
happened.
issue it on vinyl, man. Reissue it, please. There's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
new
yeah.
generation that needs to
Here.
discover this.
But these are some amazing records. Amazing records. Uh, yeah, Still Life Talking and Question and Answer. And this was the time when he was stepping out of pure jazz and he was getting into world music.
Mm.
So like his musicians included a Vietnamese guy, included some, Brazilian guy. it was already an international approach to doing what he was doing. He came from a pure jazz background. In fact, he was very heavily influenced by Wes Montgomery, but later on he started getting into world music, and he was experimenting with different kinds of tonalities and different kinds of instruments. It's very, very interesting. Okay, now going back in time, there's this guy who used to play with a group called Buffalo Springfield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But Buffalo Springfield broke up, and he made a couple of records. And this one's called "Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere."
Neil Young,
Yeah,
baby, Neil Young.
yeah. And this is his self-titled album. There you go. Yeah. Uh, and then he joined Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and everybody knows that group. So and everybody knows their songs. So
I've
I won't
actually
talk about
never,
that.
I've actually never listened to Neil Young's early solo stuff. It was always
Well,
his
that's
late
very, very
solo
interesting
stuff.
because it's just him and his guitar. It's just these are just like, but you can hear the folk rock.
Yeah.
You know what makes Neil Young very interesting is his chords. His chords are his progressions are not cliche. Very, 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 very inventive. Uh, his It's not cliche. I mean, you listen to him and you figure out what he's doing. It's amazing. Uh, and then of course Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young split up, right? And then he made this record
Yun, after the gold rush.
You may
after
old
the
man.
yeah, yeah. And, that's what this
Ayan,
record is
yan. From Jose
superstar. This record,
Antonio Sarte, Pat Metheny for the win, and ECM pressings are damn good.
Hi, Boo
yeah,
There
Boy,
you go.
Rene, Rivo, Idol.
Ayan, he also says, Johnny and Joey in one place. I am in awe once again. Yeah, but can you imagine, guys, once live music comes back, can we have a gig with the both of you on stage? I think my head would explode.
Yeah, we should have Johnny come up and jam with the Blue Rats.
Yes, please. I would love
that
this.
would
I'll
be
sing
fantastic.
anything. And
That
you
would
know what?
be
If you're gonna do an instrumental, I don't want to sing. I'll just order drinks for you guys at the bar and send it over to the stage. Ayun, Harvest. Yun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then after
Harvest
this,
by Neil
he
Young.
was a certified superstar. After this,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
these
True.
these
That was the
two
breakup.
codes
That was the breakout
CFNY records.
album.
I'm amazed, Jamie. You recognize the covers. You recognize them. You are so aware. Anyway, look. Let's go back to my early days. I mean, this is stuff my parents listened to.
Yep.
Oh,
Bossa
yes.
Nova, Gets Gilberto.
Both
Uh,
of them are my favorites, actually. Stan Getz and
yeah, Stan
actually,
Getz,
oh,
and
wow, not Astrud.
well, yes, yeah. Uh, this is a beautiful record because this was when Brazilian music went the whole 9 yards with jazz. Uh, it started to become indistinguishable. Uh, Bossa Nova and jazz became so closely tied together that it was. I mean, and again, it wasn't cliche, and it was followed up by this number two,
Number two.
wherein one side was with Gary Burton and which leads to, if you follow the genealogy, it goes to Pat Metheny. So and then the other side is a solo Joao Gilberto. And I have a
Nice.
very rare one because they had a reunion a couple decades later. And this is Gets Gilberto number 3. And this is a limited edition of only 1,000 copies.
Wow.
But I was lucky enough to find someone who didn't understand it, and I was able to buy it, and it's mint condition, and it's really amazing.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Don't you
yeah,
love it? Don't you love it when you encounter moments like that when you're collecting? You're like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he has. Oh my
yeah.
God, I'm gonna get this.
I
Or
I
he's
can
gonna
go.
sell it for cheap lang.
Yeah, because he
Yeah,
doesn't
he just
realize what
couldn't
he
get
has.
into it. So I said, wow, this is and you go to Discogs and it's selling for maybe $900. Amazing. So I mean, okay, sure. If you don't like it, I'll take it. And it was practically unplayed.
Wow.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
one man's trash is the next man's treasure.
Right
yeah.
there, right? Right there.
Okay. This is I don't know. Maybe I'm talking too long already. This is a
Monk,
record
yeah,
by
Monk's time.
this is called
Monk's
the
dream.
Monk's Dream, which was the club where we used to play in. Used to be was named after
Yes.
the record.
I've been to Monk's
Monk
Dream. Yeah. So it was a
Monk.
record pala.
This is the record. Monk's Dream. This is the record.
Yeah, it's a record.
Uh,
It's actually a record.
yeah, yeah. Uh, Monk is a very unusual player because he's not the cliche. You know, you would probably even think he's not a really good pianist because he's making all of these weird chords that you think he's making mistakes, but he's doing them so
Yeah,
intentionally.
mga sadya.
But it's just so different the way he played. He was just so unusual. There was an anecdote from Chick Corea. I listened to one of his podcasts, and he opened for Chick. I mean, a Chick opened for Monk, and when it was Monk's turn, Chick stayed the whole time behind the curtain, peeping at the fingers of Monk and trying to figure out at close range what this man was doing, and he picked up a lot of the stuff. And it's one of Chick's most enlightening anecdotes. How he was doing a lot of the stuff that Monk was doing, all those chords that he was doing. Monk kind of had some mental problems towards the end. He would he started losing his memory,
Mm.
and nothing weird, but he started losing his memory, and then finally he died. But he was just amazing, and even John Coltrane said that he learned as much from Monk as he did from Miles. Monk
Fantastic.
is one of those underappreciated. Many pianists don't really listen to Monk, but Monk is an amazing pianist and an amazing composer. I can talk about a whole lot more, but I might be taking too much time. So.
No,
Maybe you
no.
were saying something about earlier about being in the moment and on a performance level per se. All three of us here are performers. In fact, we at various times or another, we either play with one another up to today.
Yeah.
In various groups or in various settings. Johnny and I played together in some projects, which we have released some material on vinyl recently. That's a copy of it.
Can you
Okay.
reserve me one, Joey? Can you please reserve me one? Do you have another one?
This is yours.
Oh, I love you.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
And this is on red vinyl. Okay.
Joey Salgado is saying, I am enjoying this immensely. Yeah, man, me too. I'm barely talking because I'm just listening to these two masters talk about their deep love and deep appreciation for music, and it just blows my mind, pare.
Jamie, you were saying something earlier about the performance level and being in the moment and it being when everybody locks in on stage. When I was a lot younger and I was just a groupie. I was just a fan. I would tag along with my sister, and I would watch bands like Red Fox and the Dinosaurs and stuff like that in parties because I was too young to go to parties, but I would tag along with my eldest sister, whose best friend was the wife of a guy named Rene Garcia. He was the guitar player, not of Hot Dog, but of a band called the Red Fox. They did all Stones and Doors. Okay.
Wow.
They were a
Red Fox
band.
Hot Dog.
Okay. Now, my story about
Red
them is
Fox Hot Dog. Yeah.
at that time, every time I used to watch a band live, you watch them. There used to be parties wherein the entertainment before was interspersed with vinyl records, and there would be a live band, okay, during the breaks. But anyway, when I would watch these bands and I watch them up close in parties in Wak Wak or in Leon Ginto, for example, it was always like, parang you're outside looking in, and there's like this halo all over the band, and they
Yeah.
look so cool doing it, and you're like thinking, man, this is the greatest thing in the world. That's what I want to do. Okay.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
everybody's attention is transfixed on what's happening, every little nuance. The guitar player lights a cigarette, puts it on his guitar, and everybody's looking at the ash of his guitar. And then
Yeah.
the the vocalist, twirls the mic around, and then you know what I mean. You're like a yo-yo watching all these things happening. And I always thought, my gosh, there's this spirit and aura and vibe around it. And when I finally myself got good enough to play in a band, you know what I realized? The first few times that I started to play live with a band, first I was scared shitless. I
Yeah.
was scared. But
Yeah.
then you get to enjoy the moment, and being scared is part of what makes it exciting, because you don't really
Yes.
know what's going to happen. Okay,
Exactly.
so it's like performance art. You kind of know what you're going to do. There's a script in the sense that you have songs, but sometimes the singer would do this and do that, and the song would go somewhere, and it may be so interesting. You know what I found out? I don't know if this happened to you guys, but I was asking myself, man, where did the aura go? Parang it was so much cooler watching other people than me playing it. Okay, and, the very first time that I had a light bulb moment on a performance level, we were doing this song with Mother Earth, and we had some drinks, etc. We some people had some mind expanding things, and we kind of got lost in the song. We knew what song we were playing, but kind of like we got lost in the sequence, and it
Yeah.
just went on for something like 45 minutes. We were doing this song, and you know what? At one point, I looked around and I realized, you know what? None of the other guys are looking at me because they're so wrapped up in the moment.
In what they're
So
doing. Yeah.
I tuned out again, and I just got lost in the moment. And when we stopped playing, the audience was hushed. Everybody in the room was so quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And then after about 2 minutes, we thought, my gosh, we pissed everybody off. But nobody was nobody was even drinking. And they started to laugh and started to dance in their seats, right after we played. And then they started to, it became like one whole big party. And
Yeah.
you know what I realized after, when we talked to each other and said, man, what just happened there? You know what? That's the very first time that the aura came back. And you know what it was? For me, it was getting lost in the moment. That's what you said. You were saying something about that. There's something magical about performers or musicians going for it, not caring what they're doing, just letting it all hang out.
Yes.
And if they're lost in the music, the audience gets lost with them too. It takes
Yes.
them on the journey, and the journey takes several twists and turns. It's the unpredictability and the spontaneity and the creativity of the moment. Okay, that to me is what it's all about. That's what keeps me. I think that's what keeps you and you,
Yeah.
Johnny. That's why we keep on doing this thing, and that's why when we listen to these musicians getting lost in their music on vinyl or in the medium, it's a spiritual experience. Actually,
I
it's the
agree.
closest thing to prayer.
Yes.
You know what I mean? When you come out of a good service or a good sharing experience with somebody, it doesn't have to be religious, but there's something cleansing about it. When I listen to Bill Evans, I am cleansed at the end of that record. I'm ready to go to my bed and say to my wife, bring on the Netflix. I can watch Netflix now because I've had my fix of Bill Evans. You know what I mean? So anyway,
I think the magic of the moment or getting lost in the moment is when the moment is bigger than you are. when you get lost in that moment and it's bigger than what the guitar player is doing, what the bass player is doing, what the vocalist is doing, what the drummer is doing, when the moment is bigger than you are, than your individual job on stage in a band, because we all have our jobs, right? Once it becomes bigger than you are and you lose yourself in that moment and the moment takes over, I mean, I believe that we're all just vessels.
Yep.
We're tuning into some sort of frequency and we're translating it into something that is tangible and physical and understandable in this realm, right? But when you get lost in that moment, you're right, Joey. There's no other word to say it, to describe it, as other than spiritual, because
Yep.
you're connecting to that higher power, whether that higher power, whatever name you choose to call it, but that higher power that is within you and the collective sense of the band losing itself. I mean, you have like four or five individuals on stage, all from very diverse and different backgrounds, different personalities, different temperaments. And when you surrender your personality and yourself to that moment and you let the moment take over, that's the magic, pare. And then how many times has this happened to us na parang nung nagkita-kita tayo sa ending. Oh, so nag-ending yung song. Yung tinginan ka lang to each other when you're looking at each other, you're like, what the fuck just happened? That was amazing.
Yep. You know
And
when it
that's
happens. You know.
yeah, and that I live for that. I live for that. And you're also right when you're saying when you lose yourself in the moment and the band loses themselves into that moment, it's inevitable that the audience gets taken along. The people who are watching gets taken along, and that halo is not just shining on the band; it's shining on the audience as well because we're all surrendering ourselves to that moment. And
Well said.
that's why we gotta go back and play live, guys.
Yeah, well, what can I say? We haven't all gig except you, Jamie. You've had the good fortune of playing a couple of acoustic gigs, but part of what makes live gigs interesting is also the interactivity with the audience. When
Yeah.
you could be playing
The energy.
the most intricate and the greatest sounding stuff, but if the audience is not with you, then you're it's a wank.
Yes.
You're wanking to yourself.
Correct.
It's self-indulgence, and to a certain extent, that's good. But you know what? If people are not going to be responsive to what I'm doing on stage, I'd rather just stay in this room and I have my Vox amp here, my guitar collection, and my vinyl collection. I'd rather just stay here and listen to this. I don't want to lug my stuff up to a place and they like they don't appreciate it. Wag na lang, di ba?
Yeah, but it's also that also comes with, like, when you've had experience playing in bands and playing live with the audience, you learn how to read the audience.
Yep.
And that's why in all our gigs there are some, like, we come on and we have a set list, right? And there are just some moments within the set list na parang, no, I'm going to change the order. I think we should put in this song now. The audience is ready for this song. So you change the order of what you're going to play because you're reading the audience. Eh.
Right.
The audience is the fifth member of that band. Without them, you're right. We're just wanking.
No,
You
it's just
know?
what it's pointless. I'd
Yeah.
rather just listen to vinyl, to good vinyl.
The good vinyl.
What do
Okay,
you
we're
what do you
gonna.
think, Johnny?
Yeah, what do you think, Johnny? You have moments like
Well,
those?
you know, dapat hindi ka palang tumutugtog. The audience has already connected with you. When I step on stage, I look at the audience and I already start my communication right there. I haven't even played a note yet. Um, so by the time I play my first note, I've already connected. I make it a policy to connect with the audience first, feel the audience, get the vibe, feel the room, get the
Yeah, feel the
mood,
room.
yeah, and then play,
That's
play,
why
and and
I love showing up early because then I'm having drinks with with some friends who have come by, and then I talk to strangers, people I don't know in the audience even before I come up because parang you're reading the room, you're getting a feel for the room and what these
yeah,
guys
get
want.
the
Do
room,
these
get the
guys
each
do these?
room is different, and
It's
the way
different.
you play and how loud you play and how fast you play and the dynamics that you produce, it all depends on the room, and each room
Yeah.
is different.
Yeah.
It's yeah, and it also depends on how many people are in the room, because the sound
Yeah.
changes depending on
Yeah.
how many. The whole acoustics changes, and you've got to get an appreciation of that particular moment, and that's when it happens. That's when the energy and the magic happens.
I'll
And
tell
then
you
in my
something.
mm,
I'll tell you something about if you we're both guitar players, Johnny, and this is I say this in jest, no? But there's a lot of truth in this actually. If you want your guitar notes, your picked notes, your melodies to connect with the audience from the very first note every single night, you need to get a Vox amplifier.
There you go.
If you get a Vox amplifier, I guarantee you, you're just wheeling that thing on stage. Nakikita pa lang nila yung Vox insignia. They're gonna go, oh my gosh, di ba? Huwag na natin kunin yung cheat natin. Mamaya na. Di ba? Pagka inalis na niya yung amp niya.
Laglag panty na pag nakita yung Vox amp.
Oh, sigurado yun. Sigurado yun. Oh,
But that's what I love. I love about performing live, and that's one thing that during this pandemic we've more or less really missed, because like how many gigs have we had na parang and not that I'm dissing these gigs, but I love the gigs where konti lang yung tao, because it gives you a freedom also to, let's experiment, let's do what we want to do. Wala masyadong tao eh. Yung mga third set na yung stragglers na lang, yun. Doon
Yun ang
ilalabas
masarap.
natin yun ang masarap kasi mag-experiment lang tayo, di ba? But I
Oo.
think this pandemic has taught us that, these things were precious. Where you can't say anymore na, I'm not gonna watch this band, I can catch them next week. Wala lang ganun eh.
Wala nang
Because
ganun.
this pandemic has changed the entire dynamic of how we appreciate not only social gatherings but live music. And I, for one, I am guilty of saying, no, I'll catch them next week. Oh no, I'm gonna phone it in because I'm not feeling well and all that. Having the live gigs taken away because of this pandemic has made me promise myself that any invite I get, even if it's just for a cup of coffee, I'm fucking going, because we've been stuck at home for more than a year.
I'll tell you what has saved me during this pandemic, and our good friend Johnny and I, and good friends with our guru actually, Rene Rivo, said it so appropriately. Thank God for vinyl, which saved us during this pandemic. Without it, my gosh, I'd be going bananas without
Correct.
without my collection. Every penny that I've spent for my collection is a penny well earned and well invested, because the countless number of hours that I've had this pandemic to rediscover stuff, even stuff that I used to listen to before. When I turned it on again, I heard different nuances in the music. Like I remember that stuff by Lee Morgan's, that Blue Train. I've had that for decades. I'm so familiar with it. I copied Moments Notice, but when I listen to it again, I go, oh my gosh. There's a reason why these guys are monsters.
because you hear the nuances that you didn't hear before, because of the
Well,
fidelity, because
what
of the
else?
sound. The sound is so much more revealing. And that's the beauty of vinyl. That's the beauty of analog, because you can actually hear all of the little granular details that it's so hard to differentiate if you listen to a tiny little speaker. It's, it's different. I mean, that is why I think this hobby is really so nice.
Yeah,
And
tsaka it's the ritual. It's the ritual about,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, when you have a CD or when you have downloaded music, you can fast forward to, okay, I listen to this song from this album, from this artist, then I want to listen to that one. So your listening experience is like spaghetti, right?
Yes.
It's all over the
Agreed.
place, like a jigsaw puzzle. And
Yeah.
mind you, that is enjoyable. That is enjoyable. Okay?
and then
But
plus the
nothing.
visual,
I'm old
Like
school,
no, this is
like
a yellow brick road.
right.
But you open the cover and it's a panorama. Like wow, look at that.
Well,
See,
But
you get that also from CDs, okay? But the thing with CDs is that it's so small, okay? It's such a hassle, and with vinyl, if they're gatefolds, you fold it out and then you read it. It's like you're reading a book. With
yes,
CD, parang you're looking at a Bible that's that big, okay? I mean, sige, the Word of God is there, but my gosh, di ba? Ang liit naman, di ba? Um, Listening to vinyl has brought back so many memories for me because my experience before when I would listen to vinyl was not skipping songs. Sometimes we would do when we're trying to copy the guitar. But
oh
when I
yeah,
get an
magbabalik
album,
ka.
when we were in high school, our idea of a good time, what our idea of a good time is different from what kids do nowadays. Kids nowadays go, let's go hang around in Poblacion or somewhere and have a good time with chicks and get wasted. But our idea of a good time before, okay, our idea of what a good time was before when we were in high school was, hey, let's go to that guy's house, bring some beers because his mom just came back from the States and brought back the latest album of So we'd go over and that would be our evening. We'd
Yeah,
go there and we'd listen.
yeah.
We'd pwede bang pahiram ng let's the gatefold and like we'd pass it around and we listen to it and tugtugin
But
natin yung side one na naman.
but Joey, don't forget also. I mean, back then with the vinyls, when you would be out in a bar and you'd meet a girl you're interested in, you'd be like, "Hey, you want to come back to my house and listen to Dark Side of the Moon?" May ganun eh, 'di ba? Let's go home and listen to an album.
My
Now,
lips are sealed.
nobody has that sensibility anymore of like, oh, I can listen to my album on my phone. We can listen to it right now. Hindi eh. Iba yung ritual nga na nilalabas mo yung plaka sa sleeve. Tapos you put the arm down. And then let's not forget that beautiful breather that they give you between side A and side B.
Yeah.
When you have to get up and flip the record, it gives you a breather. Oh, that's banyo time. Or that's, oh, wow, let me absorb that first side of the album first as you're flipping to the next one. That's also a thing that's not around now because now everything's at our fingertips. It's on our phone. So making a call is the same process as listening to an album, which does not exist with vinyl because with vinyl, you had to give it your energy, your attention.
So
You had
to
to
make
dim
time
the
for it.
lights. Yeah, you make time for it. You dim the lights, you light a candle, and you're listening to an album. You're listening to an album. And that's the most amazing thing because you're giving the time and the energy to actually sitting down and just listening to an album, not having it on the background. You know what I mean? It wasn't background. It was an event on its own. When a new album would come out, you're like, "Pucha, we have to play this." You'd call all your friends. You come to the house. Kung ikaw lang yung meron ng album na yun, okay, we're gonna play this. It
Yeah.
was a sacrament, almost, diba? So
Yeah,
going,
it's a production. It's a whole
yeah,
production, and there's so much reverence for it. You have, as you
yes,
said, you have to make time for it. You have to put it out of its sleeve. You have to put it down there, and then you have to get pissed because you realize, the record is not clean. Now I have to clean it,
I have to
or
clean it.
my needle is, I have to brush it, etc. So maraming that's the enjoyable part of it. It's nakakainis sometimes, but what would music be without these little kinks?
Okay, so now that we're discussing vinyls and we're back from performance to our vinyls. I'm gonna go into the rundown where I'm gonna be asking you guys three questions, three simple questions, and answering it from the top of your head. What's the first answer that comes into your head? Let's start with Johnny. Johnny, what is your holy grail LP? The almost impossible dream record you want to get your hands on? And it's
Would
a
that I
very
already
very
have or the
difficult
what I'm
question to
looking
ask
for?
because these guys are major collectors. So you already might have your holy grail album, but what would that be?
That depends. Is it something that I already have or something that I'm still looking for?
Something that you're still looking for, because you know what? This shout out, you never know who's watching. Somebody might have it,
Oh,
and somebody might want to give it to you. So, what album that you don't have that you want to get your hands on?
it's called Secret Story by Pat Metheny.
Ooh. And you don't have this. You don't have it in
I
your
don't have
collection.
it. I don't even know if it exists. I know it's on CD. I don't know if it's on vinyl. So, yeah.
That's tough to find. Ikaw, Joey, ano yung
Yeah.
holy grail mo?
You know what? Uh, if I had to choose one album that I can play 24 hours every day, every single goddamn day, it would be an album of Bill Evans that he recorded in 1974. It's just him and his bass player, Eddie Gomez, and he plays some acoustic piano, but he plays Fender Rhodes on it. They do all these tunes. It's called Intuition.
Intuition.
It was
Bill
released
Evans.
locally. It was released locally, and I remember Butch Saulog and a couple of other guys who have massive collections. Okay, when we were talking about that, he was saying, "Yeah, yung kopya ko ng Intuition. It's also run down. It's local also, no." So I was able to get a copy of it from this record store, from this guy's personal collection. He was the owner of the record store, but it's a Japanese pressing. I would like to get the US pressing of it because the sound supposedly is so much better. I mean, the performance is really what I'm after, because it's when I listen to records, it's maybe 90% of what I look for in records is the performance. You know, I look beyond the sonic. Not that I don't enjoy the sonic quality.
Manufacturing, the quality.
Yeah, I like the fidelity. I like this. But having said that, given a choice between how good it sounds and how good the music is, any day, man, I'll take something that's. In fact, that's why most of what I really like to listen to are the 1950s and early 1960s jazz, recorded by a guy named Rudy Van Gelder, fantastic sound engineer, and he used to record it in his house, upstate New York. The great room of his house he converted into a recording studio, and but that's my desert island, or a U.S. pressing, a near mint copy of Intuition, Bill Evans and Eddie Gomez. Yep.
So that's your holy grail. Johnny, may si Jose Sarte nag-comment. Pat Metheny's Secret Story is on vinyl. I know. I have a copy. Oh.
Yay! So it exists.
So it exists. Now you have to find. You have to track down a copy.
Now I have to find it. It's so.
I have a copy
so
too.
hard to find.
Oh, Joey has a copy also.
Yeah.
You have a copy of Secret Story?
Kala mo ikaw lang.
Cow. Oh, I don't have one. I don't. I'm still looking for it.
Oh, wala
Ayan,
I have
na.
a CD.
Oh,
man.
that's what he's looking for.
Man, you should come to the house this weekend, and
Yeah,
just
I think that's the absolute best album that Pat Metheny ever made.
Guys, sama ko pwede.
Sige.
I'll bring a good bottle of scotch and I'll listen to
Oh
the album
yeah.
okay. Sige. You had us at the good bottle of scotch. Yeah.
with you. There you go.
Now
I'm gonna go to the second question. Okay. For the rundown, what is your most played LP? Johnny, let's start with you.
Right now, Derek and the Dominoes live.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Ikaw,
Yeah.
Joey, ano yung most played LP mo?
Jimi Hendrix live in Winterland.
Ooh.
You know, that very, very first tune that he does is just like a free-form introduction to Hey Joe. You know, it's just him, maybe about 3 or 4 minutes into it. It's live, and then he goes straight into dun 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 dun. Fantastic.
Nice. All right, third question. What would be, if you could only choose one, what is the LP that you would never ever part with? As in, they'll have to pry it out of your cold dead hands.
Oh my
What's the one
gosh.
album you would never part with, Johnny? I can see your,
Oh,
I can
that's
see your eyes
difficult.
got really.
That's that's so difficult to answer because I have so many records that I'll never part.
That's the thing.
Especially
Everybody
those
asks.
that I know will never be reissued.
Yun. Yun.
Yeah, there's so many. Like for example, the Capitol albums of the Beatles. Those will never ever be reissued. What we know as the Beatles albums are the ones from the UK, but the
Yeah.
Capitol versions, they have different titles and they have different running orders. Sometimes even different mixes, and those will never be reissued. Those are the absolute, you know, treasure. Can I show you
Ikaw,
some?
Joe. Yeah, sure.
Ah, kasi Joey muna, then
Joey, Joey, ano yung most precious album mo?
Okay. I started off by the ratio of jazz to rock is probably maybe on the ratio of 70% or maybe even 80% jazz and then 20% rock. But if I was going to choose one album that you'd have to kill me to get it, and mind you, I'll whatever money I have left, I will hire some vicious dogs to guard these albums. Okay, so you'll still get bitten before you can pry it out of my cold hard hands. Okay, you said one album. It's actually a series of four. Okay, so I'm bending the rules here. Woodstock 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Uy.
Okay, purely because that was a magical moment in time. It can never be replicated. Those kinds of, if you listen to 10 years after I'm going home, you listen to it again now. That one of Alvin Lee, I'm going home.
Yeah.
You listen to that, and if that doesn't make your hair stand, manhid ka. Okay, that's for sure. You listen to Hendrix performance. You guys listen to Sly and the Family Stone there.
Yeah, man.
How many hundreds of thousands did they get? You can hear it on the record. You can feel the sound. It's not so nice yung recording nila. But when Sly and the Family Stone came, and the Paul Butterfield Blues Band with a guitar player named Buzzy Featon, okay, and he had David Sanborn on sax. My gosh, if you hear Everything's Gonna Be All Right, you listen to that tune again today. And if that doesn't get you off your seat dancing, manhid kayo.
Awesome. Awesome. Woodstock 1, 2, 3, and 4. Johnny, you want to show us some of your
Oh
Beatles?
yeah.
The
Like for
Colombians?
example, everybody knows the cover of A Hard Day's Night, but not this one, right?
Oh yeah. So that's the
Yeah,
Columbia
this is
pressing?
the US version. United Artists. This is the
Mm.
soundtrack. Yeah, they'll never reissue it. It's not a bootleg. It's official, but they'll never reissue it.
Wow.
Yeah, stuff like that. Like you have see this familiar picture,
Yes.
but it's a different title. See, yeah,
Oo nga,
uh,
no?
yeah,
Oo
yeah,
nga,
yeah.
no? May
Oh,
combo
iba.
pa. Combo.
Oh,
Pop combo.
yes.
Ang wording. That reminds
Meet
me
the
of what my
Beatles.
dad...
This is for the American market back in the early days of Beatlemania,
Oo, yung Meet the Beatles. Ayan, yung
1960,
mga Woodstock albums.
64.
Yun.
This is
Yeah,
one.
help. Look, see, it's different, oh.
Oo
They'll
nga,
never
no?
even
Iba.
even the running order in some of the songs are different. Stuff like that.
Wow.
It's
And
not-
Joey, ano yan?
I
Hindi ko
collect
makita.
them.
This is
Hmm?
Woodstock 2.
That's two. I've never seen the cover of it.
And
That was
look,
reissued by Rhino. Yeah,
3 days
Rhino.
of peace and music. Diba?
Ganda,
Look at those
ganda,
kids
ganda.
on the drums. Sun amplifiers
Nice.
used by a band called Mountain. That's the
Okay.
drum set of Mountain.
Okay, guys, we've hit the 2 hour mark. So for the closing segment, for our last call, all right. Last question: what advice would you give to anyone who just started collecting vinyl today? If you have any advice to give, what would that be? Johnny, you want to start?
Uh, well, always buy what you like. Don't buy what people tell you you should like. You should buy the stuff you like. But keep an eye out on the quality of the product. Um, uh, you know, buy something that's worth your penny.
Mm.
Something that you could hang on to for a long time. Something that you won't regret buying later on. And build from there. Um, and I would also suggest that if you like an artist that much, you should follow the guy's career and then buy his discography. So you have a path. Because I learned you cannot buy everything. You cannot buy the history of the music of the world. You cannot
Yeah.
possibly buy the history of music. I mean, it's impossible. Although there are some eccentric billionaires who have like 2 million records, and he's standing literally on top of his pile, and it doesn't make sense. But
Yeah.
but what's important is for a collector, a serious collector, to be a connoisseur. You pick what you like, and you take care of what you like. You curate the stuff that you like, and you cultivate it, and let it grow, and then finally you might find avenues for you to branch out. Like if you like this particular artist, maybe this particular artist would play with someone else, and this someone else is also interesting to you, so you follow that person as well, and it branches, and that's how the collection grows. There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you, Johnny. What about you, Joey? Any advice for any vinyl collectors out there?
You know, it's not really advice, but what maybe I can share a little bit about how I got into it and my particular habits of um, how I pick particular records or particular music. Number one is like what Johnny said, buy what you like. Okay? But let me tell you something about that. The more you research about these artists, and the more background that you're able to, and now it's so much easier because there's the internet.
Yeah.
You can, before we had to research that by magazines,
Yeah.
by word of mouth, by people who came from the States and watched these people, by people who are actually good musicians. And we would watch their gigs, and then they'd say, when we used to play with so and so, he did this on the bandstand, etc. You know people through their music, but you're gonna know their music more, and it's gonna mean so much more if you know a little bit about the person and their associations. There's more provenance in the music. So one tip that I have is this: there's all sorts of methods in buying records. Number one, you don't have to buy a lot. Okay, you don't have to. The enjoyment of one record is the same as the enjoyment of 100. It's the same. It's the same goosebumps that you get when listening to one song or having 10,000 records. But this much I'll tell you. I've never ever walked into a record store, and I've been buying again avidly, and before I stopped buying uh, quite extensively. I never ever walked into a store with a list. I never did it.
Mm. Mm.
I never would do it. Why? Because I want to get lost in the labyrinth of the piles. I like to flip through it and see, "Uy, ito." Oh, then I flip it around and say, ito pala, this is the time that he played with so and so or something like that. Or, hey, this is unusual. This is, this is, I know it's going to be a good record already because these are the people playing on it. And this is because of that album. The more tidbits the more background, the more meaningful the music is for you. I'm not the type of buyer who, even if there's a record player there, I'll open the LP and put it on. Maybe I will, but you know what? Okay na sa akin, makita ko lang yung album and kung sino on it. So it's more like, that's how I approach music also. I have a set pattern, but I don't like to, okay, it's the next song, okay, then I'll repeat myself. No way. There was no fun. It's a wank. I want to go in there and express myself. So it's like being a kid in an ice cream store. There are 50 different flavors. You know what you want, but you want to try each and every one. And then you have your favorites, diba?
Yeah.
So that's what I would do. Go in and enjoy be in the moment. Be a kid again. Or if you're a kid, enjoy being a kid in the record store. That something is gonna be with you for life. That's why I guess this hobby is so dear to me. Because I relive we're still young pa naman, di ba? But you know,
Oh,
the memories of my youth come back to me. A song's melody comes. I remember what I did, what I drank, how much wasted I got, who I made legal to at that time. or, or what kind of performance we had when we were trying to listen to this song.
yeah.
Music is your life because your life is a bunch of memories. And finally, I read this somewhere, or somebody shared this. He used to be in a band. He was an Indian guy, okay, and he lived here for a while. He was our bass player, and he said, "You know why music is so dear in Indian mythology?" And I didn't know what this guy was putting my leg. He goes, "Because music is the language of the gods in Indian mythology." Okay, so if you can express yourself, that's why people get elated when they listen to music. When they play, when they share music, it becomes a spiritual thing. It
Yes.
makes you closer to your higher power, whatever higher
Yes.
power that is. If your higher power is vinyl, huh, then we have something in common.
All right. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you for sharing your insights, your wisdom, your experience, and your absolute love and passion for music. Thank you for coming on to the show and sharing this slice of your experience with us. Well, I'm sure I'm gonna have you guys back on the show to talk about music. Music. This is just vinyl, pare. You know,
Okay.
to talk about music on in our future shows. But thank you so much for saying yes tonight, and thank you
It was
for
a pleasure.
sharing.
It
Thank
still
you for
is.
sharing your passion. All right, so yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Johnny Alegre and Joy Puyat. Thank you so much, guys. Thank
Thanks,
you, and
guys.
be safe and take care, guys. And
Okay.
hey, we'll see each other this weekend. I'll bring that scotch.
Sige.
Great.
Oh,
Great. Yeah.
Game. Thank you,
See ya.
guys. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was fantastic. I mean, learning from these two icons of Pinoy rock and Pinoy jazz, these two excellent musicians, and the passion for music is not just in the playing it, but then they listen to it. They listen to it, they discover things, and like what Joey Puet was saying, when you walk into a record store, you don't go in with a list. You know what you like, but keep yourself open to discovery, and that's just the most amazing thing. And what Johnny says, when you're collecting, just like with your tastes in music, even if you're not collecting vinyl, whether you're listening to it on Spotify or going to see a band, go with what you like, and that will lead you down the road of discovery and appreciation and love for music. And really, it's a way to connect to your higher power, and that's what music is for us. So thank you for tuning in to our vinyl night. We're gonna have another one next month. Um, if you'd like to contribute or maybe even be on the show to talk about your vinyl collection, please drop us a line, send us a message. All right, we would love to hear from you. And before we close out this episode, just a few announcements from Offshore Music. Suspiria Pink, their brand new album Vices is available on all streaming platforms. It's a fantastic album by these new young guys. I hope they have a vinyl release. Seriously, because this album is awesome. But talking about a vinyl release, the Eraserheads are releasing their Sabado 1995 on 45 RPM vinyl. It's coming out soon. It features the Esquire recordings and includes bonus remix versions of The Maps and Lust Bass. Thank you again to our friends from the Misty Mountain Cafe in Buenos Dias, Panadera. You bring me such happiness. It's a perfect combination, really. Premium coffee and their espresso buns and their Milo buns. Really, you cannot ask for anything more. Thank you so much also to our friends from liquor.ph. Now, it's classic Scotch collection at liquor.ph. Pick up one of the best Scotch whiskey bundles around at liquor.ph today. John Dewar and Sons. The John Dewar and Sons single malt collection can be yours for just 8,122 pesos. That's 4 bottles of award-winning single malt scotches at wow, it's a 44% discount. Get it today, and of course, with free delivery in Metro Manila whenever you order from the website of our friends from liquor.ph. So, hey, thank you so much for tuning in to On the Rocks. I'm Jamie Wilson, reminding you to keep on rocking, keep on rolling, and if all else fails, let the music keep you going. And if you find that your life is a little shaken up or stirred, mixed up, or on the rocks, what matters most is that you take your shot. Thank you very much, and good night. On the Rocks with Jamie Wilson is brought to you by Offshore Music. Go where the sound takes you.